SuccessWare21 has added a new custom KPI reporting engine to the software. This KPI reporting engine will allow you to build custom performance reports for your business where you choose the individual elements of data that you want to see. You'll be able to save these reports so that you can run them whenever you wish and for whatever date range that you want to see. Finally, you'll be able to print those reports or even export them to Excel where you can further manipulate them if necessary. There's a few key terms you need to be aware of before we get started looking at the KPI engine, and the first one is KPI itself. A KPI is a key performance indicator. This is an individual data point related to your technicians or your business. An example would be a sum or an average or a ratio, something like an average ticket for a technician or total sales for a period of time. A data set is a collection of those KPIs that you choose to look at together. So again, a series of KPIs related to revenue, to performance in terms of agreement sales might serve as an example of a data set. And finally, a KPI report is a collection of these data sets that you choose to view together. Now, these reports can be run for different time frames. The standard data set allows you to define a time frame that you're going to use to total your KPI values. So this might be year to date, month to date, a specific date range, whatever you choose. And then a different type of time frame reporting that you can do is called a trend data set. Now this is going to involve a single KPI, and you're going to look at the performance of that KPI over a given time frame. So this might be an example of looking at sales month to month through the course of the year, or let's say number of agreements sold month to month over the course of a year. Let's take a look at the KPI engine.
In order to access the KPI engine, click the Report Gallery button at the top of the screen. Once you've accessed the Report Gallery, click the KPI Manager button in the lower left-hand corner. The first time that you access the KPI Manager, you'll go through a process of downloading the most current KPIs. That will happen automatically in the background. Each time that you open the KPI Manager in the future, you're going to want to check the upper right-hand corner of the screen. There'll be an indicator there that tells you whether new KPIs have been published. Clicking that option will allow you to download them. If there are no KPI updates available, the link will indicate that you have the ability to click and review updates that have been downloaded in the past. There are two tabs that make up the KPI Manager. The first is the Reports tab. Double-clicking on any of these reports will give you a listing of all of the KPI data sets that were used to compile that report. Within the report editor, you have the ability to change the order of the KPI data sets, add additional KPI data sets, or remove those that you don't want in the report. The Datasets tab will allow you to view data sets which are really just compilations of individual KPIs. The Datasets tab will contain datasets that have been created by us here at SuccessWare. They appear with the small 21 in front of them, as well as datasets that you can create on your own. The pre-built datasets can be opened and copied, and the datasets that you create can be opened, edited, and even deleted. To open a dataset and view the KPIs within it, as well as the different grouping and sorting options, simply double-click. The KPI Dataset Editor contains a listing of each of the KPIs, the grouping options as well as the filtering options, and on the Properties tab allows you to define the date range. We'll take a look at setting up a dataset a little bit later. In order to effectively use the KPI Manager, you have to understand where the data is coming from. That's why we've placed this dictionary button at the bottom of the form that's going to help you to determine where each data point comes from. The dictionary contains a listing of every KPI that's available to use in the KPI Manager. There's a drop-down at the top that will allow you to filter to only those that come from particular areas of the software. This will make it easier for you to focus on just the KPIs related to perhaps agreements, accounts receivable, invoicing, or jobs. Once you select a KPI, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a definition of that KPI that tells you exactly what data entry is necessary and what actions have to happen in the software for the KPI to be recorded. You'll also see a listing of each of the grouping and filtering options that are available for that particular KPI. This will help you to assure that you understand the KPI and that you're using it effectively in reports and getting valid results. Let's take a look at some of the most important screens used in SuccessWare for gathering KPI data.
While the data used in the KPI engine comes from many areas of SuccessWare, two of the most important are the debriefing forms. The job summary form, which is completed at the end of a job, is the technician debrief, and this is where we gather key performance data based on what happened on that job. There's also the sales summary form, and this is really a salesperson debrief where we capture the results of our sales jobs. Let's take a look at how these are used.
Let's start with the job summary form. The job summary form can be accessed from anywhere in the system that you're touching a job by simply right-clicking and selecting Job Manager. Here I'm going to perform the action from the Job Manager. The job summary form contains many of the essential elements of data that are used in identifying the performance of your technician. For example, this is the area of the form where we would indicate that a diagnostic was performed, or that the call was a warranty call, or that this was a callback, and then select which job, and therefore technician, was responsible for the callback. There's more important data on the Invoice Info tab. The Invoice Info tab contains important values, like the total job value. This is the amount that's used in determining total revenue, as well as average tickets. We also have the money task count. This is the field that identifies whether or not repairs were actually sold on the job beyond the diagnostic. Additional sales, items that weren't the original reason for being there, are included in the add-on count in the add-on amount fields. You can even indicate the amount that the tech collected on the job and return that as a KPI. The final tab to take a quick look at here is the Opportunities tab. This screen includes your ability to indicate whether an agreement opportunity existed and whether it was sold, whether there were additional sales opportunities present that were identified by the technician, and whether there was a replacement opportunity and whether that opportunity was sold as well. All of these values compile to generate the KPI data for your technician. Now let's take a look at the salesperson debrief. The sales summary, or salesperson debrief, can be opened the same way as the job summary by right-clicking on any sales job and selecting Job Summary. Here there are important elements of data to record, such as the amount of the quote that was delivered to the customer, and then information related to whether or not that job was sold, and for how much. This information is used in reporting on the performance of your salespeople. Let's take a look at how to build data sets and reports in the KPI Manager. We're going to start out by taking a look at the content of an existing data set. Just double-click to open it up. We're going to start by taking a look at the properties of the data set. The Properties tab is where you'll set the name of the data set, give it a description that will display in the list, and you're going to identify the default time frame for the data set. As we mentioned earlier, you can identify a set time frame, such as last month, last week, or you can identify a trend data set, which will look at data over a course of time. Each time you access the data set or a report, you'll be asked to identify a date for the report, and the system will compare that to the time frame you identified. Next, we'll take a look at how we determine which data will appear in our data set. To do so, click on the Layout tab. The Layout tab will give you access to modifying the KPIs included in the data set. It will show you which grouping options have been selected, as well as what filters are being applied. In order to modify the list of KPIs included in the data set, click the Edit button. To add items to the data set, simply checkmark them, or if you want to remove an item from a data set, remove the checkmark. Once you've made the changes, just click OK. Next, we'll choose the grouping or subtotaling options for our dataset. In the middle area where it says Group By, click the Edit button. The grouping options that are presented to you are dependent upon the KPIs that you chose. Only grouping options that are common to the KPIs selected will be displayed. You can select or deselect grouping options just as we did with the KPIs. Once you've selected your grouping options, click OK. Finally, in order to limit our results through the application of filters, in the Filters area at the bottom of the screen, click the Add button. The Filters form contains a drop-down list of all of the values upon which you can apply a filter to this dataset. Selecting a criteria, such as job class, will present you with a list of all available job classes from which you can select which you'd like to filter on. In this specific example, selecting individual job classes would limit the results to only jobs that fall within those classes. Once you've established the criteria for your dataset, you have three options for presentation. You can preview the dataset, you can display it in a grid, or you can export to an Excel spreadsheet. Let's take a look at the preview option first. When displaying a dataset, you'll be asked to provide a report date. This date will be applied against the default time frame that you identified for this dataset. In this example, we see a report with year-to-date data for agreement sales for technicians. From here, you can print or email the report, or simply close it when you're finished viewing the data. You may want to consider the grid view when working with large data sets. You will again be asked to identify a report date. With larger data sets, the columns of data will extend across the top of the page, and you'll have a scroll bar to allow you to see them all. Let's take a look at the third option, exporting right from here. In the Export File dialog box, choose the folder location where you'd like to save the file, and click the Save button at the bottom of the screen. Once you open the file in Excel, you'll have the ability to manipulate the data as you need, including the ability to create charts, graphs, or view the data however you wish. Once you've completed building your dataset, you'll have the option to save it. If you've opened an existing dataset and made modifications, the Save As option will allow you to copy that dataset and save it under a different name. In a few minutes, we'll take a look at combining datasets together into a single report. But first, let's build another dataset, this time a trend dataset. As with all datasets, you'll want to add a dataset name as well as a description. But this time, instead of selecting Standard Dataset, we're going to choose the option for Trend Dataset. When building a trend dataset, you'll need to identify the trend interval. This is where we'll track the change in the KPI value over a specified period of time. That time frame that you set can be daily, weekly, or monthly change. When building a trend dataset, you'll still need to identify the default time frame for the dataset. In this case, we'll look at monthly changes year to date. Next, we'll go to the Layout tab to identify the KPI we want to track over time. In the KPI and Dataset area, click the Edit button to choose the KPI. In this dataset, we're going to track total value of jobs for a select number of job classes over time. In order to make it easier to find a specific KPI, we're going to use the category drop-down to filter for just job-related KPIs. Scroll down to find the KPI you're looking for. Checkmark the KPI you want to add, and then click OK. Next, in the Group By area, click Edit to add grouping options. Again, in this case, we're going to choose to group by job class. Once you've selected, click OK. Now we're going to apply a filter so that only certain job classes appear in our results. Click the Add button in the Filters area to start. Choose the Filter On drop-down to select the value upon which you want to apply a filter. From this list, we can select from a large variety of job-related values, such as technician or even who took the original phone call. We're going to choose job class and select only specific job classes. Only job classes will be displayed in the lower portion of the window. Checkmark those that you wish to include in the report. When you're finished selecting, click OK to save your changes. Finally, click Save to save the new dataset. Let's take a look at the results of the dataset. Select the report date and then click OK. Here we see our breakdown of revenue by job class by month. Any of the values that are underlined can be clicked on and you'll be able to drill down into the data that makes up that value. You can close the drill down data to return to the report results and close the report to return to the KPI Manager. Now let's take a look at how to assemble a number of data sets into a single report. We'll do this from the Reports tab. To create a new report, click on the Add button at the bottom of the screen. Get started by typing a name for your report, which will be easy for you to recognize in the list. Our next step is going to involve picking a category for the report so that you can access it in the report gallery after it's been saved. So in addition to the report being available in the KPI Manager, you'll also find it in the regular report gallery under the category that you've selected. Now, we'll add a description of the report. The last step is to identify the data sets that we want to make part of this report. To begin, click Edit. Checkmark each of the data sets you wish to include in the report. And then click OK once you're finished. Lastly, click the Save button to save the report. Well, we can run our new report from the KPI Manager. Let's take a look at where we can find it now in the regular report gallery. We placed our report in the Management Reports category of the report gallery, so let's go there. Here we find our report listed. Double-click to run the report. As in the KPI Manager, you'll be asked to provide the report date. Click the Preview button to see the report. The report contains each of the data sets that you requested when building the report. The links that you see are clickable and will expand to show you the details that make up the report. If this report had been exported to Excel, each of the individual data sets will appear on their own tab in the Excel spreadsheet. We hope you found this walkthrough helpful. Remember, if you have any questions about the KPI Manager or anything in SuccessWare, don't hesitate to call our support team at 888-251-2779.